welcome back to Ground Zero Salem. I'm your host, Pat. Doing something a little bit different this afternoon. Still working on a few different things, kind of gathering some nebulous ideas for a few videos. I'm going to have just a good old-fashioned collection update coming at you pretty soon. What's spinning collection update. You know how we do here in Metal YouTube. But in the meantime, I thought I'd try something a little different. All the contest entries have been pouring in. Thank you so much, everyone, for taking part in the Evolving Opinions contest. Real quick interjection here from the editing desk. I forgot to mention what this contest is about for those of you that have just stumbled across this channel for the first time. This is for the Evolving Opinions contest for the Ground Zero Salem channel. You can enter with a video, with an email, or just a comment on the original video, just stating about a couple of albums, or just one if you want, that your opinion on has changed. You used to love it, now you hate it, or vice versa, or they've fluctuated back and forth a few times, oscillated even, if you will. That's what this entry that my good friend David sent me, and that's what I'm talking about. I just did not think of the fact that this might be your first Ground Zero Salem video. Yes, it's always this convoluted. I love you. But I've been getting a lot of video entries, and I've been also getting a few emails, and that is the crux of this update. As you can see, I am just a disembodied avatar here. I always wanted to do this. Always wanted to do a Sean or Gunilok or early Thought Slime kind of thing, where I don't have to worry about how stupid my face looks. So I'm doing that. I'm going to read off an entry from a gentleman that posts under DB Anthony on here. He's a freelance writer, and I really liked his entry, his email to me. He's done writing for Noisy Music, the AV Club, NPR Music, The Takeout, Post Trash, etc. You can find him on Twitter under just DB Anthony. I believe his handle is the same on Instagram. But I really, really liked his entry via email. He was going to make a video and then decided against it. And I thought I'd read it aloud for you, podcast style here. Ooh, excuse me. All right. This was Valentine's Day. How lovely that he sent this to me. Hey, Pat. So, I tried making a video submission for this contest, and let's put it this way, there's a reason I'm a writer and not on-camera talent. Since I went through the effort of trying to do that, I didn't want it all to go to waste, so here's a written submission. Much less cool, I know, but maybe one day I'll overcome the fact that I absolutely hate looking at myself, samesies, doing literally anything and jump into the YouTube pool. But until then, here's this. Some background. I'm in my early 30s, but I've been collecting records and other music-related ephemera for over 2 decades. You're probably asking yourself, what kind of 8-year-old is buying records instead of toys or comic books or something? And the answer is this one. Thanks to my family being full of music fans, my mom loves Springsteen and Petty. Good choices. My Uncle Ed had Budgie, Uncle Ed Rules, Gong, and Zappa records. My Uncle Brian had Guitar Shredders and first wave punk CDs. Trips to the record store were regular occurrences. And once I learned I could get 2 or 3 LPs for the price of a single CD, oh man, I remember those days, for the price of a single CD, that was about the end of the story for me having age-appropriate interests. Also, thanks to the late 90s pop-punk boom and the light guiding hand of my Uncle Brian, hearing Green Day's Dookie quickly led to me being gifted a punk rock starter pack featuring the first Ramones album, the first Clash album, and for some reason, the first Social Distortion album. Yeah, this is Pat, not the email speaking from DB there. I get that. I used to really, really like Social Distortion, and I don't know what I was thinking. The first album, Mommy's Little Monster, is awesome, in my opinion, but all that like pseudo-greaser stuff that they did after that, I don't think really aged very well. I'm going to be interjecting my own opinions all over my viewers' hard work here. Sorry. Anyway, by high school, Back to the email. By high school, I was deep into punk and hardcore. My favorite band was the Alkaline Trio, but I had a nausea butt flap on my pants and an assemblage of Crass t-shirts, and made it my mission to hear every single band mentioned in Stephen Blush's American Hardcore, making me probably one of 6 people on Earth capable of extolling the virtues of the False Prophets as New York City's answer to the Dead Kennedys. You and Eric Bauer and 4 other people. Anyway, all that background is to kind of give context to why my opinion on these records I'm about to write about have vacillated so wildly over the course of time. Hopefully this is actually fun to read. If not, then I guess it's not just the videos that I'm bad at. So, first one he has there is The Clash. I'm just going to take a sip of my coffee here. The Clash. In that starter pack my uncle gave me, despite the Ramones being an obvious gateway for a prepubescent kid, somehow The Clash grabbed me a whole lot more. If I had to say one reason why, it was that they were political, and somehow that meant something to me. Growing up in a pretty rundown city where most of the job options were working in the steel mill or at the BP plant, that kind of Springsteen song cosplay was built into my DNA, so hearing songs like Career Opportunities just kind of worked for me. But as I sit here, a good 5 feet from my shelf with every Clash album on it, save for Cut the Crap, I honestly can't tell you the last time I've listened to any of those records. The band's self-titled US version is the one I knew and loved, but I'm choosing the past tense for a reason. I know it has meant a lot to me and a whole host of others, but I have zero interest in hearing it. Maybe I'm just burned out on it, or maybe it's the fact that The Clash, more than almost any other first-wave punk band, has basically gotten classic rock status, where there's a million books, documentaries, and tracks on your local radio station to have removed all urgency and connection from what was otherwise baked into those compositions. Or maybe Crass was right and that Cultural Revolution was just for cash. But though I've not listened to the album in a decade, I can't bring myself to sell it either. Such is the folly of youth and the nostalgia of age. So I have my own very brief relationship with The Clash. I love that self-titled when I was getting into punk myself, and I thought it was great. Really catchy songs, White Riot, all that stuff. But I had very early memories of Rock the Casbah being on MTV constantly, and I never really cared for that song that much. They were a big favorite of my stepdad. Well, that record was anyway, Combat Rock. So I always just kind of associated The Clash with parents' music for whatever reason for a long time. And then when I got into more 77 punk, I got into it, but they were still never my favorite. Personally, and this is Pat speaking, I'd personally rather listen to Stiff Little Fingers or the first Jam record, something orally similar, you know? All right, so the next one DB's got here is the Faith Void split. From the very first time I heard this record, I loved the Void side deeply. Even now, I still think it's an absolute unhinged masterpiece, putting it right in line with the fast as hell Boston hardcore that I've always loved so much. But it wasn't until the past year that the Faith side finally connected for me. I always chalked up the reverence for that band up to Alec McKay's brotherly connection, but no, it's because the Faith actually rips. Not in the same way as Void, of course, but in a way that makes me feel angry and energized in a wholly different way. I know Ian MacKaye has said it was a mistake pairing these two releases together because it made it into a competition. And if I may add on to that statement, it's a competition that Faith was never going to win. But after having this record baked into my DNA for the better part of 15 years, I'm finally spinning the B-side just as much as the A-side. So again, to interject my own opinion, I agree. I feel like a lot of people are coming around to the Faith side of that split LP. Because Void is just so immediately satisfying and so chaotic and crazy. The Faith has a lot more intricacy. I mean, they're fast hardcore punk, but there's a lot more melody going into what they're doing. And I know that I need to spend more time with that band in general and really listen to their whole catalog. I know that the Faith kind of had more of an influence, I'd say, on melodic hardcore as it kind of developed into the later 80s. I hear it in Turning Point and some bands like that, so it's definitely important in that regard. Alright, the next one he's got is Suffocation, Human Waste. I can't tell you why this was the first death metal record I bought, but against all odds it was, and that was a gigantic mistake. To put it plainly, this shit went way over my head. Had I known what I knew then, I'd have guided my younger self toward a death metal record that had a bit more punk and hardcore in it. Early Autopsy, Symphonies of Sickness, World Downfall, etc. But hearing Suffocation was a real mindfuck. I had an interest in metal thanks to crossover and grindcore being natural bridges from what I was into, so though I could get down with the first couple Napalm Death LPs and had stuff like Insect Warfare on the shelf, real death metal remained a mystery. I tried for a couple years to have Human Waste click, and it never fully took. I sold it and moved on with my life. Then, a couple years ago, after spending a lot more time getting into actual death metal, I tried Suffocation again. While slam isn't my thing, I prefer jeans to basketball shorts. Something about early Suffocation stuck this time. Now I own everything from the band's original run and enjoy it heartily. Guess sometimes you really have to come to an album when you're ready for it and try not to force it. That's very true. I agree with that sentiment 100%. There's been numerous times where I was like, this is a cool thing that other people are into, and it just doesn't click until I really want to hear that type of music, whatever it is. And as far as Suffocation goes, my personal journey with them was I got Effigy, I think, right when it came out, and I was just so pumped about that breakdown on Liege of Inferacity. I mean, it's been talked about a million times now, just in general metal media and stuff like that, about how that breakdown kind of invented slam, for better or worse. I liked it. And you know, a few years later, really loved Internal Bleeding when they started happening, because I grew up going to see a lot of the kind of moshy victory hardcore bands every other Sunday in Syracuse, and it was kind of bridging the gap between what I was seeing live and, you know, the death metal underground tape trader kind of stuff that I was kind of obsessing over with, like in my mid-teens. All right, next one's another favorite of mine. Carcass, Necroticism, Desanting the Insalubrious. Everything I said about Suffocation there, well, the same can be said for Carcass. I knew Heartwork was the populist choice, but thanks to a Lawrence Arms song that inaccurately quoted this album's title, I had no idea about that, by the way, this became my first Carcass album. And guess what? I didn't get it at all. This was not only one of my first death metal albums, it was one of the first records I got that had songs longer than 3 minutes. Up to that point, long songs were very much not my thing, and again, had I got Symphonies of Sickness first, maybe things would have gone a different way. But alas, I spent years trying to have Carcass click with me, and Necroticism became a bit of a bulwark for me. I eventually sold it, and go figure, ended up rebuying it many years down the road. Story of my life. I don't know what eventually made me come back around to Carcass, but when I did, Necroticism hit totally differently. It's something that I think remains a really singular piece in their discography and stands as a deeply important death metal record for me. I just wish I could have said that when I was a kid. Yeah, I mean, I don't really have anything to add to that. I got into it right when it came out and loved it, but I can certainly see how if you're into more simplistic, like punkish music, like Necroticism's about as technical as Carcass got. And at that time, I was listening to a fair amount of technical stuff. It's really catchy. I could see, like, a few years down the road, like, when I was really into crust, like, not digging it. So it might have gone in reverse for me, personally, but here's one that I probably won't have any commentary on. Pearl Jam Versus. Here's a write-up where you immediately click delete on the email and call me an absolute poser, but whatever, let's get weird. I've already mentioned how growing up I came to punk pretty quick, so the grunge stuff never really meant anything to me. I didn't have an affection for it, and while I could acknowledge cool Nirvana songs here and there, it never really spoke to me in any meaningful way. Smash cut to high school, I'm playing in hardcore bands and making friends with some punks a decade my senior. We all started hanging out and realizing we like a lot of the same stuff and start a band together. One day, on the way to practice, I'm in the back of one of their cars and they put on a Pearl Jam Greatest Hits CD, and I immediately roll my eyes. I'm pretty sure I even said something like, I hate this dude's voice. And the two older dudes in front both turned around and were like, yeah, but listen to this, and put on Rearview Mirror. I've never heard the song before in my life, but from the very start of the riff, I was like, this kind of sounds like it could be on Fugazi's Repeater. Only there's a guy who can actually sing instead of a guy doing a Bob Dylan impression next to a foghorn that won't stop going off. Said with love, Guy and Ian. Occasionally he'd warble, but it was that kind of vocal performance that made me understand maybe this Eddie Vedder guy isn't such a one-trick pony. As the song built to its climactic ending, pushing the tempo and guitars to the forefront, I was kind of shocked that I didn't just like a Pearl Jam song. I think I might have actually loved a Pearl Jam song. Then they started playing me other songs I'd never heard. They put on Spin the Black Circle, and it sounded like a Stiff Little Fingers song. Then Go, which a good 15 years later, I'd watch a Kulu cover to a room of hardcore kids who had no idea what the fuck was going on, but trust me, it was sick. After years of writing off Pearl Jam, I actually found something in them I never thought I would. There was an edge and a shared set of reference points that were baked into their music in a way I never would have imagined. They weren't a traditional punk band, but they carried that ethos in a way that hit me. And the songs? Well, they had those too. Sure, they were dripping with classic rockisms too, but I learned to abide solos in metal, so that was no longer a deal breaker here. Sure, it may not be cool to extol the virtues of one of the biggest bands on the planet, but when they're this good and most people use them as a punchline, sometimes you have to. And that was it. Thanks for keeping me entertained over the years with the channel. Hope all is well, dude. So yeah, cool stuff. Follow him on social media. Support his writing. Really, really thoughtful response, so I figured I'd do it the justice of reading it aloud. Yeah, I never got into Pearl Jam that much. I've always kind of been meaning to, like, I'm sure I'll go through a phase where I'll stream some of that kind of more Yarbadarish kind of grunge stuff. I remember Rival Mob covering, I think the song's called Better Man, on like a radio set, and me being like, wow, this is actually a really good song. They did it perfectly too, because Brendan Radigan can really sing. I remember thinking like, wow, Pearl Jam might actually not be half bad, but I think I just was, I had them pushed down my throat so much in the early 90s when Jeremy was the big hit single and all that. I kind of was not interested for a long time, but it's been, 30 years or so maybe I'll give it another shot. I do remember some weird interview with, maybe it was on Headbangers Ball. It was either 120 Minutes or Headbangers Ball, where Eddie Vedder like wrote Fugazi down his arm in Sharpie for some reason. And I remember thinking like, oh, that's kind of an underground band. That's interesting. But anyway, I'm rambling here, and there's going to be enough of my vocal jazz that I need to edit out of this, so why don't I just quit while I'm ahead? More fun stuff to come. Thank you for all the entries so far, everybody. Everybody's been doing great, putting in good stuff. Love y'all.